Echoes that lie. They had been planning the hike to Pine Hollow for months, a much-needed break from city life, social media, and their own complicated relationships. Alex, Mia, Jordan, and Sam had grown up together, inseparable during high school, slowly drifting apart as adulthood pulled them in different directions. This trip was supposed to bring them back together, to relive the bond they once had. Pine Hollow was perfect, untouched, remote, and eerily beautiful. The forest stretched endlessly, pines standing like ancient sentinels, their tops lost in a low-hanging mist. There was something almost sacred about the silence there, the way sound seemed swallowed by the trees. No birds, no insects, just the crunch of their boots on old leaves and the occasional creak of a branch bending in the breeze. They joked nervously about how quiet it was, laughing too loud, forcing levity into the air. That night, they set up camp near a clearing. The fire crackled as they told stories, reminisced, and passed around a bottle of cheap whiskey. The mood was light until it wasn't. It began with laughter too familiar to be dismissed. "Dude, that was your laugh," Sam said, staring across the fire at Jordan, who immediately denied it. "Shut up, that was you, man." But they all heard it, and none of them had laughed. It echoed softly from the trees, like a recording played back at half volume, just enough to raise the hairs on their necks. For a few seconds, no one said a word. Then Alex chuckled uneasily. "Echoes, right? It's a hollow after all." But Mia wasn't laughing. Her eyes were fixed on the tree line, dark and still, as if something was watching. The fire danced in her pupils, but her face was pale. "That wasn't an echo," she whispered. "That was us." They tried to brush it off, blaming the booze or a prank, but an uneasiness settled over them like mist. It was around midnight when the whispers began, not just whispers replicas. Full sentences mimicking exact things they had said earlier that day. "Did you bring the map?" came softly from the trees, Sam's voice, identical in tone and timing. "We'll be fine. It's just trees," Jordan's voice. "I miss when things were easier," Mia's voice, cracked with emotion. They froze around the fire, heads snapping toward the darkness, eyes scanning the impossible. Alex stood up, flashlight trembling in his hand. "Who's there?" He called, but the words were absorbed into the woods. Only the fire seemed to hold the night at bay. The whispers faded and silence returned. They decided reluctantly not to leave until morning. No one wanted to navigate the forest in the dark. But no one slept either. The forest was awake. Around 3 a.m., Sam heard someone calling his name. At first, he thought it was Mia, but when he peeked out of his tent, everyone was asleep or pretending to be. Then he heard it again, his own voice, desperate and terrified. "Help, please, somebody help me." It was coming from deep inside the woods. His stomach dropped. "Guys?" He called, but his voice sounded small, distant, unimportant. The call came again, more urgent. "It's me, I'm hurt." Against all reason, Sam believed it. He staggered toward the sound barefoot, flashlight bouncing with every step. The deeper he went, the louder the voice grew, overlapping with his own thoughts until it felt like it was coming from inside his skull. "This way, this way, this way," it repeated like a mantra. Then silence. And then nothing. Not even his footsteps could be heard anymore. By sunrise, Sam was gone. The others searched for hours, calling out until their voices cracked. His track stopped abruptly near a tree with odd markings, tiny slashes in the bark like open mouths. Alex knelt down, examining them, and heard something beneath the wind. "This way, we're safe here." Sam's voice again. It was coming from every direction. Mia cried quietly. Jordan swore violently and kicked over their gear. They had no signal, no map, and they were hours from the nearest road. But Alex, strangely, wasn't panicking. He just stared into the woods, lips slightly parted, like he was listening. It's not him, Mia said suddenly, pulling Alex back. It sounds like Sam, but it's not him. Alex nodded slowly, but she wasn't sure if he believed her. That night, Jordan disappeared. It was more violent. The group had huddled together in one tent, flashlights clutched in sweaty hands. But sometime after midnight, they all awoke to a horrible, shrieking scream, Jordan's voice, followed by silence. He was gone. The zipper was open. No sign of a struggle, just an absence. Mia began to fall apart. She muttered to herself constantly, held her ears, refused to look at the woods. It's like they're copying us, she said, rocking, like they're becoming us. Alex tried to stay logical, but his eyes betrayed him. He hadn't slept. His hands shook. He kept glancing toward the trees, like something was calling. And then came the mimicry. That evening, Mia and Alex sat at the fire, trying to stay awake, when they heard footsteps approaching. Heavy, dragging footsteps. Mia stood, trembling. Jordan? She whispered. The figure stepped into view. And it looked like Jordan, same clothes, same face, but the eyes were all wrong. Too wide. The smile, too still. The voice came a beat too late. It's me. I'm okay now. It repeated it. I'm okay now. Again and again, with no inflection. Alex grabbed Mia and they ran. They didn't look back, not even when the voice started crying. Don't leave me. It hurts. Please, don't leave me. It was Jordan's voice, and then Sam's, then Mia's, though she hadn't spoken. Mia collapsed in a clearing, sobbing. They have us all, I think. I think they're making more. That night, Mia heard her own voice arguing with Alex, just outside the tent. It sounded like a conversation from 3 nights ago, replayed perfectly. She covered her ears, but it got louder. She screamed, and Alex held her, trying to hush her. They're trying to break us, he whispered. They're pulling us apart, but it was too late. Mia snapped sometime around dawn. She wandered off, barefoot, eyes glassy, humming a song no one knew. Alex chased her, begged her to stop, but she didn't even turn around. She walked into the trees as if into a dream. And the moment she vanished from sight, he heard her voice whisper behind him. We're safe now. It's quiet here. Alex was alone, utterly and completely. But the forest was not silent. He sat by the dead fire, staring into the trees. And then he heard them 4 versions of himself, one pleading, one mocking, one laughing, one weeping. They spoke all at once, layering over one another like a chorus from hell. You already left them behind, one said. You always knew you would. Why not join us? Another whispered. We're you, we're real. He covered his ears, but the voices pushed inside like worms in his skull. He wandered in a daze, days passing without time. He saw figures in the distance, his friends, smiling, waving, crying, but when he got close, they were gone. The woods folded around him, paths reversed. Sunlight vanished. The trees grew faces, open mouths, carved smiles. Eventually, Alex stopped fighting. He laid down in the moss, closed his eyes, and whispered something to no one. A lullaby, maybe. Or a confession. The forest listened. And then, one final time, his own voice answered back. We've been waiting for you. The last thing he saw before the darkness claimed him was himself standing nearby, smiling, eyes wide with something ancient and hungry. And deep in Pine Hollow, the wind still carries voices, familiar voices, calling from the trees. If you listen long enough, you'll hear your own. The hollow that remembers. They were warned, but they didn't listen. 4 teenagers, Tara, Ben, Lacey, and Ryan, buzzing with the recklessness of youth, hungry for danger, defied the quiet dread in the voice of the old man at the gas station. Pine Hollow listens, he told them, leaning over the counter, yellowed eyes narrowing. And it never forgets a voice. Especially not during the solstice. He stared too long, like he wasn't just trying to scare them, like he truly believed it. But Tara just smiled, thanked him, and walked out, shaking her head. Ryan made a joke about witchy gas station profits, and Ben tossed a bag of trail mix at the back of Lacey's head, laughing when she cursed. The car ride from there was full of teasing and loud music, the windows down as the summer breeze blew through the trees. The road narrowed as they approached the hollow, overgrown, unmarked, more tunnel than trail. By the time they reached the old forest, the air had shifted. It was heavier, quieter. No birds, no insects. Just the sound of the car tires crunching to a stop on gravel and the slow groan of the trees swaying above. The forest swallowed all sound. The temperature dropped a few degrees the moment they stepped under the canopy. They joked about it at first. Haunted forest rules, 101. Ben said. But even Lacey, usually the most skeptical of the group, seemed quieter than usual, her eyes darting toward the tall, dark trees that felt closer than they should be. Still, they pressed on, setting up camp in a soft clearing, surrounded by pine needles and crooked trunks. The hollow was deeper than any forest they'd hiked through. No birdsong, no movement, just the whisper of leaves that somehow always sounded like words just out of reach. The first night passed in relative peace. They roasted marshmallows, swapped stories, and made fun of the old man's warning until it lost all its power. But Tara noticed something strange as she lay awake, voices just beyond the range of hearing, like someone talking behind a closed door. She chalked it up to the wind. The next morning, they found the first sign. Deep cuts in the bark of a pine tree near their tent, strange symbols, faces with hollow circles for eyes and open mouths. Crude and deeply gouged, the sap still bleeding like amber tears. Lacey stared at them too long. "These weren't here yesterday," she said. Ben insisted it was some bored hiker trying to scare people. But Tara felt it in her chest that this place was watching. That night, as the fire burned low, Tara heard her own voice in the darkness. "Come here," it said, calm and cheerful. "I found something." It was unmistakably her. Not close, but not far either. She stood up, like in a trance, flashlight in hand, moving toward the sound, when Lacey grabbed her by the wrist and yanked her back hard. "What are you doing?" Lacey hissed. Tara blinked like she'd just woken up. "You didn't hear that?" she asked. "That was me. I was calling." Lacey's grip tightened. "No, you weren't." They stayed up the rest of the night, the forest pressing against the edge of the firelight like a tide. The third morning, everything felt wrong. The sky was gray, but it didn't seem like dawn. The light was dim and strange, like the sun had stopped rising. The air smelled like iron and wet leaves. Ryan found more carvings, this time in a circle around their tent. Dozens of faces now, all with gaping mouths, some smiling, some screaming. It felt ritualistic. Tara tried to find the trail they came in on, but it was gone, replaced by identical pines that stretched forever in every direction. "We're going in circles," Ben snapped after an hour of wandering. "This place is a damn maze." But when they returned, their gear was still there, exactly as they left it, like the forest had spun, but their camp stayed anchored in its center. Lacey didn't say much. She just stared at the trees and whispered under her breath. "They know us now," she kept saying. "They know us." That night, the forest spoke again, not in whispers, but in arguments. Their arguments. Voices rising in the woods that perfectly reenacted the fights they'd had, Ben and Ryan's shouting. Matched from the first night, Tara's voice accusing Ben of lying, Lacey crying. But none of them was speaking. They sat frozen in their tents, listening to themselves yelling from just beyond the trees. "It's like it recorded us," Ryan muttered, trembling. "Like the woods are replaying our worst moments." Then, Came the laughter their own, warbled and distorted, like tape melting in the sun. And beneath it all, a slow, rhythmic thumping like something big moving just behind the trees. The fire kept dying faster than they could feed it. The matches barely sparked. They tried to leave. Packed up at dawn, or what should have been dawn, and walked straight in one direction for hours. But the trail twisted. Trees they marked returned. Carvings they passed earlier now appeared ahead of them. Ryan lost it first. He ran, disappearing into the brush, shouting back at the others not to follow. His voice grew fainter, then stopped. They called out, screamed for him, even as Lacey sobbed, and Tara shook her. "He's gone," Lacey whispered. "They'll take him now." Ben refused to accept it. He charged into the woods alone. They heard him yelling at someone, then laughing, then screaming, then nothing. Tara and Lacey stood in the clearing alone, surrounded by towering trees. And silence so heavy it hurt their ears. They didn't move, didn't speak, just listened. And soon, the forest began to speak back. First came Ryan's voice. "It's fine, I found a way out." Then Ben's, "You should come see this, it's amazing." Then Lacey's, and then Tara's, arguing, crying, laughing, all playing at once like a broken chorus. Lacey curled into herself, rocking back and forth. Tara tried to hold her, but she flinched away. "They're not just copying us," she said. "They're becoming us." That night never ended. The sun never came. The fire gave up. The cold bit deeper. And before, trees shifted. Shadows moved. Shapes stood just beyond the reach of sight, tall and thin, sometimes crouching, sometimes still. At one point, Tara thought she saw herself standing among them, staring, smiling, whispering something too faint to hear. Lacey stopped talking. She just repeated the names, over and over. Ryan, Ben, Tara, Lacey, Ryan, Ben, Tara. One night, or what they believed was night, Tara left the camp to look for help. She didn't want to. But something whispered, "You're the only one left. You have to go." Lacey didn't follow. She didn't even react. Just kept mumbling names. Tara walked for what felt like hours. The trees never changed. The carvings became more grotesque faces with teeth now, twisted into agony or glee. She passed a clearing and saw 4 figures sitting around a dead fire, unmoving. Her own face was among them. The rest of the night was a blur. The forest closed in. The voices rose. She remembers tripping, screaming, crawling. She remembers the trees watching. She remembers her voice, not her, but something using her voice, whispering comfort into her own ear. "Don't be scared, we're part of you now." In the end, Lacey was the only one found. A hiker stumbled on her days later, near the edge of the hollow, alone, covered in sap and pine needles, eyes vacant. She was mumbling, repeating the same names: Ryan, Ben, Tara, Lacey, each in a different tone. Each voice a little different, like she was rehearsing how they spoke. The doctor said she hadn't eaten or slept in days. She never spoke again, not in her own voice. Just echoed the others. People say the hollow still remembers. That if you go there during the solstice, the trees will whisper you back to yourself. And if you hear your own voice calling, it's already too late. We're still in there. They were only supposed to be there for 2 nights. Kira, David, Jean, and Marcus, 4 graduate students from the university's sound engineering department, armed with cutting-edge field recorders, sensors, and parabolic microphones. Their goal: to capture ultra-low frequency ambient sounds in natural environments. Pine Hollow was ideal. No roads, no nearby wildlife, not even the chirp of a cricket or rustle of leaves. But it was too quiet. No ambient hum, no wind. Just a suffocating stillness that felt artificial, like something was pressing down on the forest to silence it. Marcus called it a recording goldmine, but even he kept checking over his shoulder. They set up camp in a circular clearing surrounded by densely packed pines that formed perfect vertical lines like a cage made by nature. Kira noticed her own footsteps sounded off, like the ground was slightly hollow beneath them. Jun chalked it up to acoustics. The gear was set, motion-triggered audio recorders set at 360-degree angles, battery packs anchored in protective cases, and a central device that monitored frequencies beyond the human range. They began to test the mics, laughing and talking into them for calibration. That night, the first oddity appeared, not with what they heard in the forest, but what the gear had recorded. David listened back to the files and paled. He called the others to hear. A perfect copy of a conversation none of them remembered having: Kira confessing she didn't trust Jun, Marcus admitting he cheated on someone, David expressing jealousy, and Jun crying. But those things hadn't happened. At least not yet. They looked at each other, confused. Could it be picking up future conversations? Kira joked weakly. No one laughed. The audio had their voices' cadence, breath, toned down to the last syllable. Maybe we're picking up cross-frequency data, Marcus said, scrolling through the file. Some kind of ghost echo. But there were no other camps nearby, no one for miles. The forest was dead silent. Then came the second anomaly, time dilation. They would be reviewing equipment, and then blink hours had passed. Marcus swore he only looked away from the screen for a minute, but when he looked back, the sun had moved. The campfire was out. His hands were dirty. Jun woke from a nap, with pine needles in her hair and scratches down her arm, but no memory of leaving her tent. Kira found the drone footage bizarre. It kept glitching, showing frames of them standing in the same clearing multiple times, sometimes overlapping, like there were copies of them standing still, staring into the trees. By the second night, they were unraveling. The forest didn't just feel alive, it felt intelligent. And cruel. The microphones picked up more voices, Kira screaming, David laughing in a twisted way, Jun whispering things in a language no one recognized. None of it had happened, yet the timestamps placed them hours into the future. David tried to shut it down, said they needed to pack up and leave, but the batteries in all the devices drained. Simultaneously, even their phones glitched. Every photo they took was blurry, distorted, or featured double images, like someone was standing just behind them. That night, Kira dreamed of walking into the forest, barefoot, whispering to herself, her eyes black and expression blank. She woke drenched in sweat, heart racing, only to find that same footage playing on the laptop screen, only it wasn't a dream. It was real. She'd been recorded walking off into the trees 3 times that night, always at exactly 3:33 a.m., always saying the same thing, I'm not ready to leave. But she had no memory of it. She hadn't left the tent, and yet there she was, on camera, in a perfect copy of her own voice and body. Jun began to unravel next. She heard voices not just from the speakers, but directly behind her. Her own voice crying, then David's calling her name, then Marcus's whispering things about drowning and burning. She began talking to herself, having conversations she couldn't remember afterward. Marcus started writing equations in the dirt. He said he was trying to map the time shifts. There's a pattern, he insisted. It's looping. The gear's not just recording sound, something is using it. That's when they checked the central recorder. It had hours of files, dozens of loops where they were all moving, speaking, and arguing. Some of it hadn't happened yet. Other versions showed them walking off in different directions, only to reappear again later. Some showed one of them standing completely still while the others interacted with a version of them who shouldn't have been there. In one clip, Marcus is seen standing at the edge of the forest, mouth moving, no sound, while another Marcus talks with Jin in the tent. There's more than one of us, he whispered. And they're getting stronger. By the third day, time had lost meaning. There was no morning, only dull gray light that never shifted. The sun didn't rise or set, it hovered. The shadows stretched in impossible directions. They saw versions of themselves wandering the woods, just out of focus copies flickering, in and out like corrupted footage. At one point, Kira stepped outside and saw herself kneeling beside the fire pit, watching the others sleep. But the real Kira hadn't moved. When she blinked, the double was gone. David panicked and tried to destroy the equipment, but it didn't break. The devices sparked, resisted, their screens flashing images too fast to comprehend frames of unfamiliar faces screaming, black forests, blood on moss, hundreds of eyes in trees. Jeanne screamed that the gear was alive, that it was building something from their memories, their voices, their fears. Kira looked into one of the parabolic dishes and heard herself singing lullabies from childhood in a voice she hadn't used in 20 years. Marcus tried to run. He ran straight for 2 hours, then came back to camp from the opposite direction, out of breath, bleeding from the ears. That night, they tried to leave together. They followed the GPS on Kira's backup phone south, directly away from the campsite. After 4 hours, they arrived back at the gear, still blinking, still running. In the logs, there were files they hadn't recorded titled in their own handwriting. "We're still in there. Let them out. This isn't a place. It's a device." The sound files played back their screams, only distorted, stretched, warped, as if recorded in reverse. Then came a final clip, someone speaking, but the voice was badly glitched. "Don't worry," it said, calmly but looping, jittering like corrupted AI speech. "You're still here. And you always will be." Marcus began crying. Jeanne scratched at her face until she bled. David stared at the trees until his eyes dried out. Kira watched a live feed from the central device. 4 people still at the campfire, perfectly still, unblinking. "Is that us?" she whispered. "Or is that them?" But no one answered. They tried sleeping in shifts, but each time they woke, someone had moved. Jeanne was found standing at the edge of the clearing, speaking softly to nothing, her voice identical to Kira's. David swore. He watched Marcus split in two, one of him crying, the other laughing. Kira stared into the forest and thought she saw dozens of people, their versions of themselves, wearing expressions they'd never made. On the final day, if it could be called that, Jeanne walked into the trees and never returned. They found her voice recorded on every mic, looped in layers, overlapping in different phrases, never forming a coherent sentence, but always ending with, "We're still in there." Marcus sat down in the center of the camp, took off his shoes, and refused to move. His skin began to pale. His voice, when he spoke, was fragmented. "This isn't a forest," he said. "It's a memory loop, and we're the source file." Kira and David tried one last escape. They destroyed the central recorder with a rock, but when they returned minutes later, it was intact and playing a video of them watching themselves destroy it. "It's already happened," Kira whispered. "We're inside it." David began sobbing uncontrollably. The light dimmed further. The voices got louder. Kira screamed when she saw Jeanne again standing silently, her face slack, eyes black, repeating, "I'm not ready to leave." Dozens of voices echoed it, like a swarm, a hive. Kira recorded one final message into her phone, but when she played it back, the voice that spoke wasn't hers. It said only, "We are you now." In the end, rescue teams found nothing. No tents, no gear, no students. Just a forest that shouldn't have been so quiet. An abandoned microphone was discovered buried in moss, still running, still recording. The last file? 4 voices, perfectly clear, speaking in unison. "We're still in there, and so are you."